Tasha Morgan had never been a fan of blind dates. She preferred the predictability of her own life, a steady job in marketing, evenings spent with her books or sketching in her journal, and weekends dedicated to exploring the city or trying new recipes. Yet here she was, sitting in a quaint, dimly lit cafe, nervously twisting her napkin as she waited. Her best friend, Monique, had insisted this particular setup was perfect, claiming she had a guy who's exactly your type, but Tasha wasn't convinced. Blind dates, in her experience, rarely lived up to expectations. They were awkward, forced, and often left her questioning her own taste in people. She glanced at the door every few seconds, hoping to see someone who might spark even a flicker of interest, but each newcomer's face only reinforced her skepticism. Tasha's mind wandered to her own doubts. Could this really work? Was she too picky, or was it simply that the universe hadn't yet sent someone worth her time? She sighed and sipped her tea, reminding herself that even disasters could be entertaining stories later. When finally her date arrived, the disaster began immediately. He was late, apologizing with an exaggerated smile and a handshake that felt more like a greeting to a business client than someone trying to make a connection. His presence seemed to dominate the small table in a way that made Tasha even more self-conscious, highlighting the contrast between the warm, inviting ambience of the cafe and the awkward tension between them. The conversation started with small talk, as expected, but it quickly fell into mismatched topics. He boasted about vacations Tasha couldn't relate to and made assumptions about her interests that were completely off the mark. She attempted polite laughter, but the sound felt hollow even to her own ears. Tasha's initial nerves transformed into mild panic as she realized the evening wasn't improving. She tried to redirect the conversation, but each attempt seemed to miss the mark. The silence between them grew heavier with every minute, punctuated only by the occasional clink of cutlery or the distant hum of other patrons chatting around them. Monique's words of encouragement echoed in her mind, but Tasha couldn't shake the feeling that this blind date was not only a mismatch but an outright disaster. Yet, beneath the discomfort, there was a tiny flicker of curiosity, an almost imperceptible feeling that maybe, just maybe, the night wasn't over yet, and perhaps, the unexpected was still waiting just around the corner. As Tasha tried to recover from the awkward exchanges with her blind date, she barely noticed a tall figure enter the cafe. The moment he walked in, heads turned subtly, and a quiet energy seemed to ripple through the room. He was the kind of man who carried power effortlessly, broad-shouldered, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that accentuated his commanding presence. His dark eyes scanned the cafe with an air of quiet confidence, and his neatly styled hair reflected a meticulous attention to detail. There was a magnetic aura about him, a mix of elegance and enigma that made it impossible to ignore him, yet he carried himself as if the world didn't need to notice. Tasha's blind date fumbled over another pointless story about luxury cars, and she let out a barely audible sigh of frustration. That was when she felt it, someone's eyes on her. Looking up, she saw him glancing in her direction, a subtle smile playing at the corner of his lips. It wasn't the kind of smile that demanded attention, it was measured, curious, and somehow disarming. He approached her table casually, as if the universe had gently nudged him toward her, though she had no idea who he was. "Excuse me," he said smoothly, his voice low but warm. "I couldn't help but notice you look a little trapped." There was a teasing lilt to his words that made her glance at her date, who seemed oblivious to the observation. Tasha blinked, unsure how to respond, but the way he spoke carried neither arrogance nor condescension, only a genuine interest that immediately set him apart. "I guess you could say that," she admitted cautiously, a small smile breaking through her nerves. His eyes twinkled as he pulled up a chair nearby without asking, respecting her space while signaling his willingness to stay. The conversation started lightly, casual banter that quickly revealed his sharp wit and keen sense of observation. He asked questions that weren't just polite, surface-level inquiries. He seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts, her feelings, and her perspective on things that mattered to her. Though she didn't know his name yet, Tasha could sense a quiet intensity in the way he watched her, a subtle attraction hidden behind a composed exterior. He laughed at her jokes, not just politely, but with a warmth that made her feel seen. Even in the brief moments of silence between their words, there was a connection, unspoken yet undeniable. It was as if the universe had intervened in the middle of her disastrous blind date, presenting an unexpected twist that hinted at something far greater than either of them could anticipate. The blind date was going from awkward to unbearable. Tasha's date had clearly decided that boasting about his wealth and achievements was the key to impressing her, but his delivery was clumsy and irritating. He made insensitive jokes about her work, laughing loudly at his own comments, and even questioned her tastes in movies and music as if her opinions were inherently inferior. Tasha tried to smile politely, attempting to redirect the conversation, but each word only seemed to deepen her discomfort. By now, the surrounding diners were subtly noticing the tension, their polite glances mixing curiosity with mild amusement. Just as her patience was about to snap, the billionaire subtly intervened. Standing nearby under the pretense of checking his phone, he leaned slightly in her direction and remarked with a soft but pointed tone, "I think someone here might be speaking a little too loudly for the rest of the cafe." The comment was delicate enough to avoid confrontation yet sharp enough to make her date pause mid-sentence, a flush creeping up his neck. Tasha felt a small surge of relief. It wasn't a dramatic save, but it was enough to make her feel less trapped, less exposed. Encouraged, she glanced at him, and he offered a slight, knowing smile. There was no pretense in it, no judgment, just a quiet acknowledgement that he understood her discomfort. The conversation naturally shifted as he smoothly engaged her with light, clever banter, asking questions that didn't feel forced or superficial. His curiosity was gentle, his wit sharp, and he listened with an attentiveness that made her feel seen for the first time that evening. For the first time, Tasha noticed the subtle details, the way his eyes lingered for a moment longer than expected, the ease with which he carried himself, and the genuine interest in his tone. Something about him was magnetic yet comforting, an unusual combination that left her intrigued despite the chaos of the evening. Their laughter came easily, flowing over topics that were surprisingly personal yet not invasive. By the time the evening progressed, Tasha's perception of the night had shifted entirely. The disastrous blind date was still ongoing, but it had become background noise compared to the unexpected connection forming across the table. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel a spark of curiosity and even excitement, a sensation she hadn't anticipated when she reluctantly agreed to Monique's setup. It was the beginning of something entirely unplanned, something that promised unpredictability, and perhaps, a hint of adventure she hadn't known she needed. Just days after the disastrous blind date turned unexpectedly intriguing, Tasha found herself walking through the lobby of her workplace for a late evening meeting. She was preoccupied with her own thoughts, drafting presentations and mentally preparing for a demanding client pitch, when a familiar figure stepped into view. Her heart skipped a beat as she recognized him immediately. It was the billionaire from the cafe, impeccably dressed once again, exuding the same effortless confidence that had both unsettled and captivated her days before. She blinked, momentarily unsure if she had imagined seeing him in the fluorescent-lit hallways of her office building. "You," she started, voice catching slightly. He smiled that same subtle, enigmatic smile, and nodded. "Tasha, I didn't think I'd see you here." There was no hesitation in his tone, no uncertainty, only that quiet assurance that made her both nervous and exhilarated. She couldn't help but be impressed that he remembered her name, her laugh, even the little details she had casually mentioned during their cafe conversation. They moved to a quieter corner, and the conversation flowed easily, just as it had during their first encounter. Unlike the awkward small talk with her blind date, here, there was depth. They spoke about books they loved, shared observations about the city, and even exchanged light-hearted banter about the quirks of life. His humor was subtle, intelligent, and entirely different from anyone she had ever met. Tasha found herself laughing freely, her earlier tension melting away as the initial disbelief of seeing him here gave way to a growing excitement. He asked questions that went beyond the superficial, inquiring about her aspirations and challenges. She hesitated at first, surprised by his genuine interest, but then allowed herself to open up. In turn, he shared glimpses of his own world, his passions, the pressures he faced, and even a rare vulnerability that he didn't show casually. This exchange created an unexpected intimacy, one that made Tasha feel both connected and curious about the man beneath the polished exterior. By the time their conversation ended, Tasha's mind was buzzing with a mix of disbelief and anticipation. How could fate orchestrate two encounters so close together? How could someone so seemingly untouchable feel so approachable and real? The tension between reality and fantasy was palpable, leaving her with a sense that her life had shifted subtly yet irrevocably. In those brief minutes, she realized that this encounter, unlike any blind date before, might be the beginning of something far more extraordinary than she could have imagined. After their chance encounter at her workplace, the billionaire, whose name Tasha soon learned was Alexander Drake, began pursuing her with a sincerity that felt startlingly genuine. Unlike the wealthy men she had occasionally met through social circles, men whose interests seemed tied to status, appearances, or advantage, Alexander's attention wasn't flaunted with flashy displays or ostentatious gifts. Instead, it manifested in thoughtful gestures, checking in with her after stressful meetings, remembering the smallest details she casually mentioned, and offering genuine encouragement when she doubted herself. His charm was understated but potent, and it carried a warmth that made Tasha feel noticed in ways she hadn't before. Yet despite the growing connection, Tasha's heart wrestled with insecurities. She was painfully aware of the vast differences between their worlds, the contrast of her modest upbringing and everyday struggles with his opulent lifestyle and high-profile reputation. Society's whispers weren't imaginary either. She occasionally caught sideways glances or subtle remarks from colleagues and friends questioning why someone of her background would attract someone like Alexander. These doubts weighed heavily on her, making her hesitant to fully embrace the relationship, yet something about his consistent, patient kindness drew her in irresistibly. Their romance unfolded quietly, almost like a delicate secret being nurtured in the shadows. He invited her to private dinners at unassuming bistros rather than extravagant restaurants, and late-night walks through quiet streets became their refuge from the judgmental eyes of the world. Sometimes, it was as simple as a cup of coffee delivered to her office during a stressful day, or a handwritten note left on her car windshield that made her smile despite the chaos around her. Each gesture, no matter how small, built a foundation of trust, care, and mutual respect. In Alexander's presence, Tasha discovered a rare sense of safety. She began to share pieces of herself that she usually kept hidden, her aspirations to grow in her career, her dreams of creating art that resonated with people, and her vulnerabilities about past heartbreaks and disappointments. He listened intently, never interrupting or offering unsolicited advice, only validating her feelings and celebrating her achievements. Over time, these intimate conversations fostered a connection that went beyond superficial attraction. It became emotional, intellectual, and profoundly personal. As days turned into weeks, the secret romance deepened, and Tasha realized that for the first time, she was allowing herself to hope. Hope that love could exist without pretense, without judgment, and without the barriers she had long feared. In Alexander, she had found someone who didn't just desire her for appearances, but cherished her for who she truly was, igniting a sense of belonging and excitement that she hadn't known she could feel. For a while, Tasha and Alexander's connection seemed invincible, as though their shared laughter and quiet moments could shield them from the outside world. But reality soon crept in with unrelenting force. Alexander's family, accustomed to a certain social standard, quietly disapproved of her. They whispered behind closed doors about her modest upbringing, her everyday mannerisms, and the fact that she didn't come from wealth or social prominence. Family gatherings that should have been warm and celebratory became subtly tense, each polite nod and strained smile a reminder of the invisible walls surrounding them. Alexander's business associates, too, expressed doubts. Some openly questioned whether he could remain focused and credible if entangled in what they termed an ill-matched relationship. While Alexander remained steadfast and unapologetic, their disapproval planted seeds of unease in Tasha's heart. To make matters worse, gossip began to spread like wildfire. Tabloids caught wind of their meetings, pictures of Tasha arriving at Alexander's offices, videos of them walking together through the city streets, and speculative commentary about the nature of their relationship. Headlines screamed phrases like, "Billionaire's new obsession," and "the black woman at the billionaire's side," reducing her to a caricature and stripping their connection of nuance. She felt exposed in a way she had never anticipated, as if her personal life was no longer her own, broadcast for the judgmental eyes of society. Each article and passing remark chipped away at her confidence, leaving her to question if she was strong enough to survive in his world without losing herself entirely. The pressure manifested in tension between them. Arguments flared, some sparked by external judgment, others by misunderstandings amplified by stress. Tasha questioned whether Alexander truly understood the weight of scrutiny she faced, while he struggled to balance defending her with maintaining his own demanding lifestyle. Words were exchanged in heated bursts, accusations of not being seen, of failing to understand one another, and of fear of losing themselves in the relationship. It was exhausting, emotional, and frighteningly real, and for the first time, Tasha wondered if their romance could withstand the strain. Despite the challenges, there were moments of reflection and realization amid the turmoil. Both recognized that the friction was not born of a lack of love, but of external pressures magnifying internal insecurities. Tasha's fears of inadequacy, her concern about social judgment, and Alexander's struggle to reconcile his world with hers created a storm that threatened to drown their bond. Yet, beneath the arguments and tension, a foundation remained, built on genuine affection, mutual respect, and shared vulnerability. This realization offered a glimmer of hope, though it remained fragile, that their love might survive if they confronted the pressures together rather than allowing them to drive a wedge between them. The tension that had been simmering for weeks finally erupted one rainy evening. Tasha and Alexander met at his penthouse after a long day, both exhausted from the constant scrutiny and gossip that surrounded their lives. The argument started small, an offhand comment about her being overwhelmed by social expectations, but quickly escalated into a torrent of pent-up frustration, insecurity, and fear. Tasha's voice trembled as she admitted, "I don't know if I can do this anymore, Alex. I feel like I'm drowning in a world I don't belong to." Her words were raw, unfiltered, and piercing, cutting through the protective bubble they had built around themselves. Alexander's initial response was defensive, a mix of anger and helplessness. "Tasha, I've done everything I can to protect you. Why do you think I don't see how hard this is for you? I'm fighting the world for us." His tone was a mixture of frustration and desperation. He felt misunderstood, as if all the sacrifices he had made were invisible, as if she thought his love alone could shield her from everything. The weight of expectations, the gossip, and the judgments of others had magnified every insecurity they both carried, turning small doubts into an avalanche of emotion. As the argument spiraled, Tasha felt a painful conviction settle over her. Maybe love, as intense and sincere as theirs was, couldn't bridge the chasm between their worlds. Maybe she wasn't strong enough to survive in his life without losing herself. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, maybe we're just too different. Maybe love isn't enough." Her heart ached at the thought, but she also knew she needed space to breathe, to remember who she was without being consumed by his world. Alexander, too, felt the weight of the moment. Watching her struggle, seeing the pain he couldn't erase, he realized that his wealth, his influence, and even his love weren't sufficient to shield them from life's harsh realities. His chest tightened with fear, the fear of losing her, of letting the pressures of the outside world tear them apart. Despite his anger and frustration, he understood the gravity of her feelings and agreed, reluctantly, to a temporary separation. They parted that night with heavy hearts, neither truly happy but both recognizing the need for reflection. Alone in her apartment, Tasha grappled with self-doubt and sorrow, while Alexander retreated to his penthouse, wrestling with the fear of losing the one person who had truly seen him. In the quiet aftermath, both were forced to confront their vulnerabilities and reassess what love meant in the face of societal pressures, insecurity, and the challenge of bridging two very different worlds. During the days of their temporary separation, Alexander found himself haunted by the absence of Tasha's laughter, the warmth of her presence, and the way she made even ordinary moments feel extraordinary. He realized, with stark clarity, that she was irreplaceable, not just in his life, but in the very core of his being. The world could judge, gossip, or disapprove, but none of it mattered compared to the truth he had come to know. Tasha was not someone to compromise with or replace. She was someone worth fighting for, against every obstacle, every expectation, and every whisper of doubt. Determined to protect her from further harm, Alexander took a bold step. He publicly addressed the rumors swirling in tabloids and social circles, challenging critics with unwavering confidence. In interviews and on social media, he spoke not of wealth, power, or status, but of Tasha's intelligence, compassion, and character. He made it clear that their relationship was grounded in respect, love, and mutual admiration, and he refused to allow prejudice, whether about her background, race, or social standing, to define her worth. His words carried an unshakable sincerity that silenced detractors and demonstrated that he valued integrity and love above reputation. Meanwhile, Tasha, witnessing his public support and reflection, began to reclaim her own strength. She remembered the dreams and ambitions that had once defined her before self-doubt crept in. No longer willing to be silenced or diminished, she faced the world with renewed confidence, asserting her voice and refusing to let societal prejudices dictate her path. The temporary separation had given her the clarity she needed. She could be loved for who she truly was, and she would not compromise that authenticity. When they finally met again, there was no hesitation, only a profound understanding of what they both meant to each other. They reconciled with open hearts, acknowledging the challenges they had faced and promising honesty, patience, and resilience. The pain of their separation had transformed into a deeper bond, built on trust and emotional intimacy. For Alexander, the reconciliation was also a lesson in vulnerability. He showed her that true love wasn't about maintaining a perfect image or shielding himself from judgment. It was about courage, authenticity, and choosing her over the expectations of the world. Their reunion wasn't just a return to romance. It was a declaration that love could thrive even under scrutiny, that mutual respect and understanding could conquer fear, and that together, they were stronger than any obstacle standing in their way. After months of navigating the highs and lows of their relationship, Alexander knew it was time to take the next step. He wanted a proposal that reflected everything they had been through, from the disastrous blind date to the quiet, tender moments that had drawn them together, to the trials that had tested and strengthened their bond. He planned meticulously, ensuring that every detail would speak to the depth of his feelings and the journey they had shared. He chose a serene rooftop garden overlooking the city skyline, a place that symbolized both new beginnings and the heights they could reach together. Soft fairy lights twinkled overhead, and candles created a warm glow, setting the stage for a moment that was intimate, heartfelt, and unforgettable. When Tasha arrived, she felt a mix of anticipation and nerves. Memories of their first awkward meeting flickered through her mind, juxtaposed against the love and trust that had blossomed since. As Alexander took her hand, his eyes locked onto hers with a sincerity that melted away all lingering fears. He spoke softly but with conviction, recounting their journey, highlighting the laughter, the tears, and the growth they had shared. He acknowledged the external pressures, the prejudices, and the moments of doubt, emphasizing that through it all, their love had endured. His words were a reminder that their connection wasn't about wealth, status, or appearances. It was about authenticity, respect, and devotion. Tasha's eyes welled with tears as she absorbed every word. Despite her lingering insecurities and the fears that had once held her back, she felt an overwhelming surge of certainty and love. When he knelt on one knee and presented the ring, she could no longer resist the truth of her heart. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "Yes, I will marry you." In that instant, all doubt vanished, replaced by a profound sense of belonging and shared destiny. The wedding that followed was lavish yet deeply personal, blending elegance with meaningful touches that honored Tasha's heritage. Traditional elements intertwined with contemporary design, reflecting the union of two worlds in harmony. Guests marveled at the ceremony, but it was the authenticity and love radiating from the couple that captured everyone's attention. Family and friends from both sides witnessed a celebration built on more than appearances or social expectations. It was a testament to resilience, respect, and enduring affection. As Tasha and Alexander exchanged vows, promising to face life's challenges hand in hand, it was clear that this union had transcended the trials of their past. They weren't just marrying each other, they were celebrating a journey from unlikely beginnings to a love strong enough to defy societal norms, gossip, and prejudice. Their story, once filled with uncertainty and awkward beginnings, had culminated in a union that was deeply, unshakably real. Looking back, Tasha often marveled at the strange twists of fate that had brought her to Alexander. What had begun as a blind date disaster, awkward silences, mismatched conversation, and a sense of impending embarrassment, had somehow transformed into the foundation of a lifelong romance. The chaos of that first meeting seemed almost laughable now, a stark contrast to the profound connection that had developed in its wake. It was a reminder that life often works in mysterious ways, turning moments of discomfort into opportunities for growth, discovery, and unexpected happiness. Both Tasha and Alexander had changed in remarkable ways throughout their journey. Tasha had discovered a resilience she hadn't fully recognized in herself, learning to navigate societal judgment, self-doubt, and the pressures of being in the public eye. Her confidence grew, not from conforming to someone else's expectations, but from embracing her authentic self and standing proudly in her worth. She realized that love did not require sacrifice of identity. It thrived when both partners were free to be their truest selves. Alexander, too, had grown. The relationship challenged him to look beyond the privileges and assumptions that had previously defined his life. He learned to value vulnerability, empathy, and authenticity over status and perception. His love for Tasha taught him that power and wealth were meaningless without genuine connection and mutual respect. He had learned to listen deeply, defend fiercely, and commit wholeheartedly, not just to a relationship, but to nurturing a partnership rooted in trust and understanding. Together, they had transformed into a couple that complemented one another in ways neither could have anticipated. Their love was not without obstacles, but those challenges strengthened their bond, proving that relationships built on shared values, respect, and emotional honesty could endure anything. They learned to navigate disagreements with patience, to support each other's dreams without compromise, and to face the world as a unified force, resilient against judgment, gossip, and societal expectations. The story of Tasha and Alexander became more than just a romance. It became a testament to the power of resilience, the importance of self-worth, and the ability of love to transcend barriers, whether societal, cultural, or personal. Their journey illustrated that sometimes the most beautiful and meaningful connections arise from the most unlikely circumstances, and that destiny has a way of guiding those willing to embrace it, even when the beginning seems uncertain or disastrous. As they stood together, hand in hand, reflecting on their extraordinary journey, Tasha often whispered to herself, and sometimes to Alexander, "Sometimes, the worst beginnings lead to the most beautiful endings." It was a truth they lived daily, a reminder that life's unexpected detours could lead to unimaginable joy, and that love, when nurtured with patience, honesty, and courage, could transform even the most awkward encounters into the start of something extraordinary.